Welcome back to another edition of the Behind the Mask podcast. I am your host, Takeo Spikes, joined alongside by my co-host,
Tutan Reyes in the building.
And two, it's always a great thing when we come together because not only do we come together to entertain each other, but we come together to educate and inform our viewers on what's going on in this current climate. And we'll go right to it. Our current guest needs no introduction, but we will do our best just to bring him on in. Attorney General Carr, thank you for joining the Behind the Mask podcast show today. How are you?
Gentlemen, it is great to be on with you. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for allowing a Georgia Bulldog to come on your podcast.
Listen, it pains me terribly to know I'm trying to change the allegiance, but you know what? It's okay since y'all got some of the heavy hitters out of school, so maybe we'll be able to meet you again in the SEC championship and take it on to the national championship.
Absolutely. We look forward to it. Just as long as we have some football this fall.
I know that's right. We are hoping and we are all praying, so that's the reason why we're doing this episode, social distancing, and we encourage all of our viewership out there to continue doing that so we can get back to normal or somewhat normal as fast as we possibly can. But Attorney General, and so my question for you is just knowing where we are, tell us about your efforts in the Ahmaud Arbery case and why you ultimately had to step up in the case and to do what you eventually did by pulling their jurisdiction off of it.
Absolutely. Well, number one, it's in our backyard. You know, the Ahmaud Arbery case happened in Brunswick, and I was actually tagged on Facebook on May the 5th with the video that came out. And, I mean, guys, it's like everybody else, anyone else of goodwill, every other human being that I know, I was repulsed by it. You're sickened by it. And here it is, it's happening in Georgia. But again, the first thing that kind of came to my mind is, no, this is not my Georgia. This is not our Georgia. We need to do something about it. And I want to commend Governor Brian Kemp. I want to commend GBI Director Vic Reynolds. Again, once the state was made aware of the video, and some folks, I'll tell you what, Takeo, too, some folks have said, well, that the video, it took the video coming out for folks to be aware of it. Well, I say, thankfully, thank heaven that video came out. We did see with our own eyes what happened, and it was horrific. And so from the minute the state was made aware of it, that night on May the 5th, the GBI Director, Vic Reynolds, reached out to the district attorney to see if any help was needed. The district attorney asked the GBI for help, which was the right thing to do. Within 12 hours, the GBI is on the ground in Glenn County. And within 36 hours of being on the ground, an arrest was made, which was the right thing to do. And as I've said from the very beginning, I've said it to members of the community. I've said it to Ahmaud's mom. We need to know what happened from February 23rd till that video came out on May 5th. And that's why we've asked the U.S. Attorney's Office to look into the communications and the actions of the first two district attorneys. We've asked the GBI to do the same, because more eyes are better looking on this than fewer. And we just need to make sure that justice is done, and justice will be done if we can learn the facts.
Do you feel an increase of the responsibilities when you have to come in and take on cases like this that typically you don't start out taking on?
Yeah, I do. And on a human level, I feel a responsibility. Again, when you see what you saw with your own eyes, and again, there's an investigation going on, so I don't want to go too much into it. But when you see what you saw as a human being, if you have an ability to do something, you want to do it. And that was kind of the sense that I had. And I appreciate it. There were three. We had the first two DAs that had a conflict issue. The third DA that I mentioned that asked the GBI to come in. Smaller office, didn't have the resources when he originally took the case. It was kind of at one stage, and then after the video came out, it was at another. So we asked Joyette Holmes of the Cobb County District Attorney's Office if she and her office would take the case, and they did. And Joyette is a prosecutor. She was a defense attorney, but she's a judge and has a great reputation, and her office could handle it. So their office is actually handling the prosecution of the 3 individuals that have been charged with Ahmaud's killing. We've asked the GBI to look into the actions of the other DAs as well. And so there are ongoing investigations that are going on. But number one, first and foremost, it's got to be about Ahmaud. A human being, a fellow human being, lost his life that day. And every single human being has dignity and value and worth, and he deserves it.
I think one of the things that our audience may not be familiar with is your role as Attorney General is to ensure that all civil rights of all citizens in your jurisdiction are being met, that the laws are being honored and abided by. Just briefly talk about what your office is committed to doing to ensure that Black Americans in Georgia are actually receiving the same civil liberties, civil rights that other people in Georgia are receiving.
I represent all Georgians, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, people that like politics, people that don't like politics. And so my job as the Attorney General is to take whatever the laws have been passed by the legislature, signed by the governor, put into effect, is to make sure that the fair application of the law occurs. That means irrespective of any characteristic, what does the law say in the state of Georgia? That's what my responsibility is. If the law needs to change, we've got a great process for that. Go to the legislature, the legislative branch changes the laws. And look, right now, there are a lot of peaceful protests that are going on. People are voicing their opinions. They're debating the issues. And then their elected officials have the responsibility in the legislative branch to evaluate those. But whatever is duly passed by the legislature and signed by the governor, that's our job to do. And all we do is look at the words on the page. We don't look at anybody's face. We don't look at anybody's name. We don't look at anybody's gender, their sexual orientation, where they're from. The law is the law. What the words on the page are matters. And the fair application of the law matters as well. And I say, look, my duty is to do 3 things. Defend the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution and laws of the state of Georgia, and represent the interests of the people of our state. At the end of the day, I am responsible to the people, all 10.5 million Georgians in this state. They afford me this opportunity to serve as their Attorney General. And the only way to do it is fairly and appropriately and abiding by the rule of law. That's the system that we have set up. And it's one that's important. And it absolutely should provide equal protection for all of our state citizens.
And I commend you, Attorney General, for all the work that you do. Just doing our research before this interview, you've been on record supporting things that maybe some of your constituents may not support, including the Anti-Lynching Act. I guess, how do we move now? Because it's been on the book for a while, but how do we move now from support to action and from action to pass legislation?
Get on the phone, send emails to Congress. It really is shocking to me that we have never been able to pass an anti-lynching bill. And Senator Tim Scott and others are working on it, and I commend him for the job that he has done. It passed the United States Senate. It went to the House, and it got changed a little bit, and it's come back, and that's okay. That's how the process works. The Senate and the House are 2 different bodies, but it's important that they come together, find common ground, and finally pass this piece of legislation. And again, I've been in contact with Senator Scott, and we've been in contact with his office, and I really think his approach is spot on. But again, I mean, I think it's important. It's important historically, and I'll tell you, you mentioned earlier, and I mentioned the trust initiative. And if y'all would give me a minute to kind of talk about how that started.
Absolutely.
I think it's an interesting story, and it goes back to this issue of lynching. And a couple of years ago, one of our political reporters had asked me about a monument to Dr. King on Stone Mountain and what I supported. And I said, absolutely, I support it. Again, big history buff. I don't know why we wouldn't honor Dr. King. He gave the single most important civil rights speech in American history. It mentioned Stone Mountain for a number of different reasons that you got to understand. But it was given by a guy that grew up 15 miles down the road. I mean, why would we not honor him? So I said, absolutely. And first statewide Republican elected official in Georgia to endorse the idea. I got a call shortly after that from the chief of police from LaGrange, Georgia, a guy by the name of Lou Deckmar, just a great guy. And Lou said he wanted to come see me because he had this project that he wanted to talk to me about. So he comes and he sits down and he said, Chris, and this would have been probably 2018, maybe end of 2018. But anyway, he said a year earlier in 2017, he had a police officer come into his office and said that there were two African-American women that were out in the lobby of the police station. And one of them had looked up and pointed at one of the former police chiefs and said, they killed our people. So the police officer came to talk to Lou, told him that. Lou said, well, what did that mean? And he said, I don't know. So Lou did some research. What he found out was in 1940, a young man by the name of Austin Calloway was lynched. And at best, the LaGrange Police Department didn't help search for him. At worst, it may have been part of it. And so Lou did this research and he found out what happened, and he found out the role that his police department played. And Austin was found about 7 or 8 miles outside of town. Well, Lou had decided he was going to call a public meeting, and he went to the church where Austin went in 1940. And he had about 200 or 300 people there. And he got up and he said, I'm sorry. I apologize for the role that our office played in Austin Calloway's lynching. So Lou had been the former head of the International Association of Chiefs of Police, the Georgia Association of Chiefs of Police, and they were partnering with the John Jay Institute and a nonprofit in Mississippi that does racial reconciliation, and said, hey, we want to start this program with 10 police departments in Georgia where we acknowledge history and we bring people together to talk about injustices that have been done to racial minorities and how we move forward. And he asked me to give the keynote speech, which I did last May. And so we've been working on that project now. And we're working on getting it funded so that not only can the 7 or 10 that originally started, but more police departments. Why? Because we have a history in Georgia of solving tough problems. We are the foundation and the birthplace of the civil rights movement. Dr. King and so many others. This is, I think, important for us to continue that tradition. And at this moment where police community relations are strained at best, to be able to have this program where people can come together to talk and solve problems in a meaningful and real and lasting way is important. And so we're still working on that. That was one of the things, Takeo, I had mentioned in my statement. This is the kind of constructive dialogue that we need to have, because we need to make sure that what happened to George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery doesn't happen again. Now, and Ahmaud, it wasn't with a current police officer, but one of the gentlemen had been a former police officer. And one of the reasons I'm so passionate about this, and I think you can appreciate this too, is because, again, having a daughter and why I got involved in human trafficking and elder justice was I can't imagine the fear that those girls or those elderly folks that are abused are feeling. And you know what? I cannot imagine the fear that Ahmaud Arbery felt coming around that pickup truck. And I can't imagine the fear that George Floyd felt when he was on the street in Minneapolis. It's the same thing. I may not have the same life experience as either one of those gentlemen or you guys, but as a human being, I most certainly can appreciate that fear. And at the core, our constitutional principles are freedom from fear of the government telling me how to practice my religion, or what speech I should give, or who I can associate with. Freedom from fear. That's what it is all about. And I can't imagine and that's why I'm passionate. So when I find groups that are wanting to do something good, that want to bring folks, because we've almost forgotten how to talk with each other. We talk at each other sometimes, and the temperature's been turned up so much. Let's turn it down, and let's learn from one another, and let's make a lasting difference.
There's no doubt. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so that's how the Trust Initiative started, and that's why I'm so passionate about it.
No, because I agree with you. One of the things you just said is we don't know how to. We have a tendency to start more so talking at each other versus talking to each other. And you talked about the Trust Initiative, how it was started. And the hope and the goal, I know, is to not only to create dialogue, but to be able to bridge that gap and make communities feel more safe. And that's one of the things that when you look at it overall, and just to be completely honest, if you're Black and you living in America and you've seen what has happened over the previous months, we feel like we're not safe, especially when you get stopped. And you talked about the officer who got up and apologized and said, you know what, I'm sorry that this happened. I'm sorry that the right discipline wasn't taking place. And so when we look at these things and moving forward, my question to you, we know a lot of officers, the impunity. And is the trust initiative, the impunity meaning is so many barriers to where officers are not held accountable. And that seems to be the thing that a lot of people, including myself, are just going crazy and livid about. So when you look at the trust initiative and you say, yes, we've started in 10 counties, if I haven't mistaken you, but do you look at this as something that you would look to extend all over the state? And how soon, if you are?
It would be great if we could. We're trying to fundraise now because, you know, you got to be able to have the resources to be able to bring folks together and want to be able to pay for the different police departments to be able to come. But yes, with the resources, I firmly believe that this is the vehicle, this is the platform for communities to be able to get together. And guys, it goes beyond community and police. In LaGrange, Georgia, they've actually created the Racial Trust Initiative, which is the mayor, the police chief, head of the NAACP, members of the community, where it goes beyond police issues. It's just issues in general. And so we know this can work. So yes, from the trust initiative, as with so many things, it ends up being a resource issue. But if we can get the resources together, then yes, that more police departments can come together, more communities can come together, and this is it. And yet again, I'm, Takeo, I know you were born in Augusta and played in Washington County, and this is a chance for Georgia to again take the lead and be a leader to show the model for how it can be done.
Do you ever feel tension having to prosecute and go after some of the state police agencies? I mean, that kind of has to be difficult with the fact that you actually work with them on a daily basis.
It's a good question. So I mentioned that we're the lawyers for the executive branch of state government. So we would actually be the lawyers for the state patrol. Sheriffs in Georgia are constitutionally separate. They're elected by the people of their county. Police departments are a creature of generally the cities, but sometimes the counties. So, and district attorneys in Georgia are also constitutionally separate. And in Georgia, district attorneys are the ones that take the lead on most criminal activity in the state. We have criminal jurisdiction on a few things like human trafficking, but public corruption is one. So if it was an issue of public corruption, it would be something that we could do. But to answer the question, as I tell our team and ask our team, take the name out of it. Was the law violated? That's just what I want to know. Did somebody break the law or did they not? That's the key on any issue, whether it, doesn't matter who it involves or what it involves as far as our office. Did somebody break the law? Take the name out of it. That should be irrelevant. The point is, what does the law say and was the law followed? But that to me would be the calculus that we take when we're looking at issues.
And I want to ask this question just simply due to, we know criminal prosecution, but what other options besides that are available to hold the police accountable when they are clearly at fault? As you look at George Floyd, he was murdered. And even though Ahmaud Arbery, he used to work for the department, but what other options are there to be able to have that accountability?
Sure. There's a couple of different ways, I think, too, Takeo. One is again, was a criminal law violated? And yes, there have been challenges. And again, I know part of why we're trying to investigate is we're trying to figure out what happened, between February 23rd and May the 5th as it relates to that particular case. So the question of, will a police department charge, will a district attorney or a prosecutor bring a case? But yes, criminal charges can be brought. And if somebody's broken the law, again, It shouldn't matter who they are. That should be a function of what should be done. The other thing in Georgia is we have an agency that certifies police officers, and it's called Post, and they can look into the actions of police officers to make sure that it was done the right way. And you know, the way that I've kind of looked at this too is I've said this, you know, it is not just to put your knee on the throat of a fellow human being until he or she dies. It is also not just to shoot a police officer on Facebook Live who's protecting his friend's store. It is not just to see a young black man running through your neighborhood and presuming he's a criminal. And it is not just to presume that every police officer is racist. And so you got to look at the facts of what has happened and hold people accountable. And maybe there, you know, I have yet to talk to a police officer that says putting your knee on the throat of the person that is in custody is appropriate. Not one person has said that. Don't know what the training is in Minneapolis, and they may be looking at it, but absolutely looking at training, absolutely having these conversations. And what we've seen, one of the police departments here in Metro Atlanta has opened up what's called Operation Transparency, and they're talking about their training program and how they do things and getting more public input. But, you know, again, I go back to we live in a social media world where there's a lot of video and there's a lot being seen, and that's a game changer. Should it have been that way? Maybe not. But look, again, thank heaven there is a lot of video out there that we've been able to see, because it does allow and put pressure on holding folks accountable where it should be. And if somebody did something wrong, the video will show it. If somebody didn't, it will that as well. And then again, that's also why you investigate. You want to get to the facts. Mm-hmm. That's how you get to justice, is to get all of the facts, not opinions, facts.
Attorney General Carr, you've done some tremendous work in your tenure now as Attorney General. Where would you like to see Georgia go the remaining years that you do have in office?
You know, you mentioned we've been the number one state in the nation in which to do business. We are growing leaps and bounds. You know, folks want to move to Georgia. Like I said, Atlanta, you've got Savannah, you've got other places. I want to continue to make sure that this is a state where businesses want to locate and families want to locate and people feel safe and they feel secure. We have a lot of good history to build on as it relates to how we solve problems. We're not perfect. Nobody's perfect. But I think we've got a great record that we can build on, because I do want people to still see that Georgia does it differently. And we have. Not perfect, but we've done it differently. And so, but that takes everybody coming together. And that is how we've done it economically, is by bringing together the private sector and the public sector and solving those problems. And that's what I want us to be known for going forward on whatever it may be, because we're a great state. We're a great state. And we've got some great universities, and we have some great football programs too, Takeo.
Look, Chris, before we let you go, I would like to ask you this, and this is really a message. It's not only for me, but I'm a citizen of Georgia, born and raised. Yeah. But what would be your message to all Georgians, especially people of color, minorities, Black Georgians, to let them know you talked about we have this opportunity to take advantage and show the other states, if it can be done here, it can be done everywhere. What would be, I would say, your words of confidence to the fellow Georgians out there, to let them know that regardless of whatever may happen, if it's in Atlanta or even if it's in South Georgia, that we are going to uphold a standard and make sure that we be the leaders and be proactive versus being retroactive?
You know, I think look at what we've done. Again, I'm a big history buff, so look at our history, look at where we've been, look at how we've gotten to where we are. what I think is important is when we see problems, we say something about it, and then we do something about it, and in a genuine fashion. And that's what I think is important. Those three kind of cornerstones of whenever you see an issue is identify the problem, do something about the problem, be genuine about it. And I think there is a reason why Atlanta is Atlanta. And and it goes back decades. We are a welcoming state. We are a welcoming city. We have a rich culture and history of doing things together, and we're going to continue to do it. And just look at what has happened over the last 7 to 10 days. Look how the city of Atlanta and the state have worked together. Look at talking about ways that look at the protection of peaceful protest. Again, look at the involvement of peaceful protest. There is a tradition and a respect for what our history has been, and that is change. And when change is needed, we've seen, over decades that there is a peaceful protest, and it has resulted in results, for lack of a better way of saying it. So look at the way we've done it in the past. Continue to engage and be a part of it going forward. All Georgians, all 10.4 million Georgians, because we have something to be proud of as a state, and we're going to continue to do it.
Attorney General Carr, you are off the hot seat, man. Thank you for your time.
We appreciate you going behind the mask with us.
Guys, thank you all so very much for having me on. I greatly appreciate it. Hope your families and you stay safe and well.